Let us all stand and remember that we are in the presence of God. In the name of the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit, God of power and might, every good and perfect gift comes down to us from you. Implant in our hearts the love of your name. Give us everything good that we deserve this day. Guide us in every righteous way. We pray for the input and for the talk that we are going to receive. Let it be transformational in our lives. Let it guide our conscience and our hearts. Let it guide our lives, and let it also guide our decision making in every moral act that we undertake. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Thank you, Father Moy. Now, the next, we are welcoming our director, the center, Reverend Dr. Mbaro, to welcome the.
Good morning. Good morning. I hope that we have started the day well. And we are here to give thanks to God for this wonderful time that He has given us. And I welcome you all to this learning session as part of enrichment in what we are doing as students in various faculties, but all called towards promoting the dignity of the human person and defending the sacredness of human life. And with us to help us do this is none other than Dr. Wahome Ngari, who is going to take us through this topic that is already displayed on our screens: countering myths and misconceptions in the life ministry. Dr. Gary has been in the front line in defending human life and promoting the dignity of human person. And being in the Life Week, they are already very much occupied with different programs. And when he was requested through the intervention of Mr. Richard Kaketo, he spared time for us. And I think we need to appreciate that. Let us appreciate him for that. Louder. Thank you very much. Being a very busy person in the area of treatment and taking care of those who are ill and those who are not ill, being also assisted by him to live a healthy life, he has found time to come and share with us. For those who are doing Christian ethics, we very well understand that we had in the first module issues regarding human life. And those who are doing justice and peace, we all understand that our main mission is to promote the dignity of the human person by defending one of the greatest of all the rights, and that is right to life. And therefore, I will welcome you, my dear brothers and sisters, our dear students, together with the lecturers, that we may journey with Dr. Wahome Ngari as he takes us through this input. Dr. Wahome, these are students in their first years of academic life in this university. There are those who are in 1.1, that is first year, first semester. There are those who are in first year, second semester, but we still have a few who are in their second year. So they are ready to learn from your experiences so that they become also champions in defense of human life, defense of the dignity of the human person, and promoting also the ministry of the families. So They are ready to learn, and they are here to listen to you, and therefore, most welcome. Dr. Wahome Ngari told me that he is going to explain to you what are the areas of his specialization. But he told me to say that he is in the area of OBGYN. And then after that, he is going to tell you what all this is about. Let us give him an applause as he sits and presents to us what he has prepared for us. Let us give him applause. Welcome, Daktari.
Good morning. Good morning. As you have been told, my name is Wahome Ngari. I have other titles because the government has not seen it fit to consider me an elder of the burning spear. I am the husband of Mercy, that is HOM. I am the father to Nyinge Ngari Nyingi and Gathoni. That's the second title. I'm a child of God. It's the third title. And I'm an obstetrician gynecologist, meaning I'm a doctor who looks after women. I've dedicated my whole life to look after the woman. Obstetrics is when she's pregnant. Gyne is any other problem outside of pregnancy. I am a member of the Catholic Men's Association. I am the moderator of the CMA in our parish at the Shrine of Mary Hope of Christians, Don Bosco. I am a commissioner of the Catholic Justice and Peace Commission. I am a member of the Kenya Catholic Doctors Association, and I'm also a member of the Kenya Christian Professionals Forum. And I also sit in the family board of the Archdiocese of Nairobi. So for this presentation, those will be what is relevant. My son Ngari is 28 years old, so I will be speaking to you both as a doctor and also as a father. Part of what I'm going to share with you is born from experiences that are very personal. I was brought up in a Christian home, and I left the faith. I went into spiritual wilderness. I came back to the faith and found all the answers I was looking were right there where I left them. And I find that I have wasted years, and if I could save just one soul from going through the same kind of madness, I'd be very happy. So the objectives of our discussion is part one, we'll discuss the truth as our foundation, is very important. And then part two, we'll look at sexuality. And then part three, we shall look at broken sexuality. And then the last part, we shall conclude. There is a lot of information, so I'm sure this is being recorded so that if you have time, you can go through it again. There's a lot of stuff to cover in those 2 hours. Now, information is what we use to make our decisions. And it is what influences our mind, and whatever influences our mind will influence our choices. And therefore, information becomes very important. The only problem is that information can be truth, which means it is absence of falsehood. If you have done any MCQ questions, you know that just one false word within the statement means you have to cancel the whole thing as false. For it to be truthful, then the whole statement must be truthful. Then there is fiction, which is information based on imagination. And then there is deception, which is information that is basically designed to mislead. If you are not careful what you consume, then you can make very bad decisions because you base them on falsehood. And therefore, it's very important that right at the foundation, we are very clear that the truth must remain our foundation, otherwise we will do zero work. Now, it is at this point that I'd like the first video to be played. The video titled Alternative Math. Control room.
Looks like you're having some trouble with addition. Now don't be upset. You're here to learn. And we learn from mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes.
Nuh-uh.
Look at this question here. What is 2 plus 2? See, you wrote 22. But when we do addition, we don't just put the numbers next to each other.
That's stupid.
All right. Think about it this way. If I have 2 markers in this hand, and then I add the 2 markers from this hand, how many markers do I have now?
22.
No, Danny, it's 4.
Mrs. Wells, we're Danny's parents.
Oh, yes, hello. Oh, please come in. Now, don't worry. It is completely normal for kids to get frustrated when they're struggling with a subject.
So what's this about Danny getting some answers wrong on this so-called test of yours?
We had a test. One of the questions was, what is 2 plus 2? Danny answered 22.
And?
And that's not the right answer.
Says who?
Says math.
Are you calling my son stupid?
No, of course not.
Who are you to say that your answer is right and that his is wrong?
No. She's right.
Thank you.
Right out of Nazi Germany.
You can't honestly tell me that you don't know what 2 plus 2 equals.
You got it all figured out, don't you? You smart-ass little tramp. What are you, some kind of retard?
All right. I'm sorry. I am not going to be able to continue this conversation.
We're gonna complain to the principal about you.
Danny is a free thinker.
I'll have your job, bitch.
Not if you can't add 2 and 2 together, you won't.
Mrs. Wells,
Oh, sorry, Principal. I didn't see you.
I understand you had an issue yesterday with the parents of one of our students.
It did get a little crazy.
When things get out of hand, I really need you to let me know about it.
Sure. So how do you want to handle it?
I guess you could apologize.
What? His mom hit me.
I understand you told Danny he had a wrong answer on his test.
He did have a wrong answer on his test.
Yeah, it's not our job to tell students when they're right and wrong.
That is exactly what our job is.
Parents don't want you ramming your biased views down their kids' throats.
That's not biased. That's how math works.
You know what doesn't work? Your attitude. Look, maybe I can explain this in math terms so you can understand. If you took all the kids in this classroom and divided them by 0, that's exactly the amount of respect you're giving them. Something you'd like to say?
You can't divide a number by 0 and get 0.
So now I'm stupid. Just some crazy administrator doing paperwork while you superstar teachers change the world.
Students count, teachers count. Students count, teachers count. Students count, teachers count. Stop undermining our kids' confidence! Are you going to apologize to the parents? Why didn't you even start teaching if you hate children?
Please, have a seat, Mrs. Wells.
Thank you. You know, I honestly think this will all blow over if we just wait a week or so.
I'm afraid we can't do that.
Why not?
They're suing.
For what?
Emotional distress to a minor. Mrs. Wells, can you please tell the members of this board exactly when you became aware of this fiasco and the events leading up to the riot?
Riot? I just told a student that 2 + 2 = 4.
We need for you to recant that.
What?
Just say that you're open to the possibility there might be multiple correct answers.
But that's not true. We can't let them bully us. This is so stupid.
Stupid. That's your problem. Anyone who disagrees with you is stupid.
There is nothing to disagree with. There is only one correct answer.
For your sake, I certainly hope you have that correct answer when the media gets wind of this.
I do. It's 4.
I have my own answer. This school minus you equals tomorrow.
You're firing me?
Suspending, while you reconsider your extremist views.
You brought this on yourself.
Breaking news. In what's being called Mathgate, an activist elementary school teacher was caught abusing her students' First Amendment rights.
It's an interesting story. Okay, so this teacher, this liberal elitist, tells this innocent little first-grade kid that his answer is wrong. Only her answer is acceptable.
Yeah, from what I hear, she doesn't even keep these students for more than a year. After that, they all leave her and go to another teacher.
It's called graduating.
So it's creating some good, healthy debate in this country. Some experts say that 2 + 2 = 4. Others say that it's 22.
No, they don't.
Look, if you hate America that much, why don't you just go teach in commie France?
Hello.
Hello, Mrs. Wells. The board decided that for everyone's benefit, your services will no longer be required.
For everyone's benefit? How about the kids?
I need you to come by the school tomorrow. We don't need you radicalizing our students anymore.
Mrs. Wells, thank you so much for coming. You know, I'm just so sorry it happened this way. If only you'd been willing to be more open-minded.
About math? What about academic integrity?
You were warned, given an explanation, and yet you persisted. But we will, of course, fulfill our financial obligations. Now, that's $2,000 for your last pay period and $2,000 for this one, so that's $4,000.
Wrong. It's 22,000.
It's time for
That's good enough. Hello, control. Hello. We can put back my slide. So what do you think? The truth versus deception or political correctness. We are living in a world where we don't have enough courage to stand for the truth, that a man can stand up and say he's a woman, and if you call him a he, he's going to sue you, and we actually accept it and say it is politically correct. That video is a very good example of what happens if you let deception take root. It can destroy a whole community. So the things we take home is that the truth is not based on your personal opinion or how you feel, and the truth is not about the majority. that remaining true truthful requires courage, and that truth is not the opposite of false, but the absence of falsehood. So the best way to understand truth is like light and darkness. We cannot measure darkness. What we measure is light, and in the absence of light, then we say there is darkness. And that is what the truth is. The truth always takes away the darkness. And deception eventually backfires. But if it goes unopposed, it can actually bring a lot of confusion and suffering. So, is there a God? All of you are calling yourselves Christians. Is there a God? Is it that you guys didn't have breakfast? Is there a God? What makes you think so? So some of you are told by your parents, right? Some of you grew up understanding that. Have you ever seen him? How do you know God exists? It's a very simple question, but it is one we've never reflected on most of the time, even as Christians. And it brings us a lot of confusion when you meet atheists and you meet other people who tell you they don't believe in God. And you are not able to justify. And one of the reasons is because the Bible does not justify God. The Bible assumes you are intelligent enough to first believe he exists. It just tells you about his nature. But the Bible, you cannot use the Bible to demonstrate to someone that God exists. So let us do a little exercise. Where did I come from? So I was conceived in my mother's womb. And I started on a journey that is called life. And it doesn't matter whether I know my mother or I don't know my mother, whether I know my father or I don't. Each one of you were conceived by a man and a woman. Whether you know them or you don't is irrelevant. Now, this journey called life, one of the most difficult things that I have to do in life is to choose between what is good and what is evil. Inside in my heart, I know what goodness is. Because I have a conscience in me, and that conscience is inherent to the human person. It is not based on religion. But I struggle to make a choice. And I know my life is going to end in death, and that the death will be the separation of the body and the soul. So any one of you who has ever witnessed death or has seen a dead person, you all know when we go to the funeral, we go to bury the body of our loved one. We don't bury them. We talk about this is the body of the late so-and-so. Something leaves the body for us to have death. And yet we know that that soul exists. If at death the body and the soul will come apart, then it means they came together at conception. And if I was conceived, then if I follow my father to my great-grandfather to great-grandfather, all the way I will come to the conclusion that there must have been a man and a woman who existed at the beginning of time. They must have been a man and a woman who existed, who were not born. Otherwise, we haven't reached the end or the beginning of the human race. So again, through reason, we find that there must have been the first parents. My culture tells me it was Gikuyu and Mombi. Then I met Luos and I wondered where they came from. They told me they came from Ramogi and his 5 wives. And the thing is, so long as the Luo and the Kikuyu exist, we still haven't reached the beginning. Because at the beginning there must have been a man and a woman. Now the man and the woman were eating the same food you eat, so it means the physical environment must have pre-existed them. True? And then between the animals and the plants, which ones do you think came first? The plants must have come first for the animals to have food to eat. True? And for the plants to grow, then you need your oxygen, you need the sunlight, you need the soil, you need all those other things. Therefore, it means that the whole of the physical environment must have pre-existed life. And if that then is true, then the question is, where did those come from? Now, the scientists tell us there was a big bang, and the gases exploded, and then they condensed and formed all these planets. And is a very interesting, the Big Bang theory is a very interesting theory. But it has one small problem. If it is gases that existed and exploded, then it means that matter existed, and we are looking for the source of matter. And therefore, the Big Bang cannot tell us the beginning, because gas is matter. And if gas existed, where did it come from? And who caused that explosion in the first place? We also know that when you condense gas, it reduces in size. How did gas form planets if it came from a beginning? So the other theory is that there is a creator, that there is one who is, was, and will always be, meaning they are eternal, that they pre-existed what we see as natural, and that must be in spirit form, because it wasn't there, there was no matter before it. That it created everything that we see and we don't see, and gave order to the universe, means that decisions were made, so it is a person. And that is what we call the Almighty God of all creation. It is not a concept that is unique to the human, to the Christian faith. And it is something that you will find every time you ask that question, where did I come from? You will come to the natural conclusion that there must exist a creator. Now you can open your Bible, and it says, in the beginning, God created everything that you see and that you don't see. But we also know that there is a problem with our being consistent with goodness, that there is a fracture somewhere in our being. Even though we know what is good and what is right, sometimes we still have to fight the body and the flesh, because we sometimes make the wrong choices. Now, if you ask me if I believe there is a God, I say yes. Why? Because I can see what is natural and that exists. And I cannot explain how it comes to be unless there is a creator. I believe in God because inside of me there is a natural law, there is a conscience that guides me towards goodness. And every time I do what is wrong, it convicts me. I believe there is God because of death. What is that leaves the body, that differentiates me from the body that is lying here in the coffin? And I believe in God because there is a fracture somewhere in my soul. There is a craving for truth, to understand why it is that I cannot consistently do what is good. So now we have found God. Let us look at some of the things that are important. There is a God. The spiritual world is real. That death is the end of your choices, but it is the beginning of eternity. The minute you die, you cannot make more choices, and you start your eternal journey. That creation is supernatural. It is what is the beginning. And the supernatural is what created nature. So when you study nature, you're studying what was created or brought to be supernaturally. And therefore, science, which is the study of nature, does not and cannot dispute the presence of God. In fact, nature witnesses that there is a God. Everything that was created with a purpose in mind, and that is basically the basis of natural law. Okay? We also must keep in mind that natural law is superior to man-made law. Now let us look at some of the deceptions that have been causing a lot of havoc in our lives. This is a life cycle that is normally taught to us in schools. The life cycle always starts with an adult female, then an egg, then if it was a fly or something, it would be a larva, then a pupa, then something else. So in the chicken one, then we have a fertilized egg here that hatches into a chick, and the life cycle begins again. Now, there is something very wrong with this life cycle. And since we don't have much time, I will not entertain your debate. But the question is, between the egg and the chicken, which came first? Do you know that story? When scientists who do not believe in God want us to have a debate about the beginning of life, what they ask is, between the egg and the chicken, which came first? So if you say it's the chicken, then the question is, what did the chicken hatch from? Because we know chickens come from the egg, isn't it? And if you say it is the egg, then who laid the egg? And then the conclusion is that it is not possible to determine when life began. And that is how they would prefer that we enter into our debates. But the truth is, it is the cock that is missing from that life cycle. The male is missing. And the reason the male was removed by the scientist is because once you place it here, then you must understand that for every species that multiplies through reproduction, that at the beginning there must have been a male and female that pre-existed the whole of that species. So that egg can never hatch into a chick if it wasn't fertilized. And it cannot be fertilized unless there is a cock. And therefore this life cycle we have been taught all our life through school has been deceptive and has been designed to make us believe in creation, in the theory of evolution, that we came from molecules that then matured and evolved through stuff. The truth is that for each species to exist, there must have been a male and female brought together at the same time as adults that can reproduce for you to get that species to multiply. There are other interesting things that I will send you to go and read for yourselves. This is the fossil of a dinosaur that died when giving birth, and it was fossilized in the process of giving birth. Now, fossils, we are told, happen over many millions of years, where sediments cover these bones over many, many years, millions and millions of years. The thing is, for this dinosaur to have died during childbirth, whatever killed it must have been very sudden. And it must have been buried in tons of soil suddenly, so that the process of reproduction never completed. The other one that is very interesting is what we call polystate fossils. So you have many layers of sedimental rock, and we are told each one of them came over millions and millions of years, but every so often you find a tree trunk that cuts across all of them. It is not possible that this tree remained without being fossilized, waiting for millions and millions of years to be buried under layers and layers of rock. Again, it means that whatever happened here must have been sudden, with a lot of flooding, and by the time the sediments were forming, the tree trunk was still upright. And those two are very interesting concepts that challenge the story of evolution and actually bring in the issue of the flood, that there must have been a catastrophic flood that would explain the fossilization that we see in our nature. Now, since you are not taught the human life cycle, I'll take this opportunity to teach it to you. In the beginning, there was God. We have found God. And God created everything that you see and that you don't see. And it is very important you remember that it is you who needs the environment. The environment doesn't need you. It is your business to look after it for your own sake. Otherwise, it doesn't need you. It was created to support life. Then God created man and created woman. And then he institutionalized what we call marriage, that the two of them come together. The first unit of the family is entered through marriage. And in that unit, then we get fruitfulness. And that baby that is inside the mother's womb is not a part of the mother. It is a totally independent being that requires accommodation for only 9 months, after which it leaves the mother alone. The baby is then born, and the baby needs to be brought up in a family that has both daddy and mommy, because we learn different things from daddy and we learn different things from mommy, and we need this to become adjusted properly to our challenges in life. It is then the many families that form the community. The community is not made of individuals. And it is from those families that we will then get the couple that will give us the continuation of the life cycle. And because we are spiritual beings, there are those that will go back to the Father. And unfortunately, there are some that will not find their way back to the Father. And this is the life cycle of the human person. If you destroy any part of this cycle, if you allow this man to believe he can become a woman, or this woman to believe she can become a man, if you decide that marriage is overrated, that we don't need it anymore, then we start getting fruitfulness that is outside of marriage, and we entertain abortion. We have children in the streets. We have broken families, and when we have broken families, then we have a broken society. And these institutions are under great threat. If you remove the center here, everything falls apart. Now, the life cycle, this is the general life cycle, because when we are dealing with the sacredness of life, we are not only Christians, there are many people who believe in the same concept. There is a different one. We modify this. If we are talking about Christians, then man was created complete on his own. Then God removed from him something to create the woman. Man represents only half of human nature. The woman represents the other half. Then they sinned against God. God sent his son to come and die for us. And from that point, then our life starts with Jesus Christ as the center, and then we go to the same cycle. So that's how we modify it when we are talking to an only Christian community. Let us look at human rights, because again it is another area of our life that has been destroyed, has been used to destroy our faith. From natural law or from belief in God, then human rights would be those gifts that God has given us. Those gifts that God has given us. We are made body and soul, and therefore when you're discussing the body, the first right that you have is the right to life. It is a principal right without which you cannot enjoy all the others. So the right to life is what is in relation to our body. When it comes to the soul, then it is the right of choice or free will, your freedom, that is in relation to your mind, because you are free to make your choices. You are so free you can make choices that disregard the commandments of God. It's just that there will be consequences. Then we were created to go into families, so there is community, and we were given the right to establish a family. And then we were given the environment, and we were given the right to feed off the environment. We need to live off the environment, and it is there for all of us. The world belongs to all of us, not to a particular individual, and all of us have a right to make a living out of the physical environment. Now, if you understand that, for us as Christians, or for us who believe that there is a God, then these rights come with responsibilities. The right to life then comes with the responsibility to protect the dignity of human life. The right of choice or free will then comes with the responsibility of seeking, being guided, and imparting the truth. You will never make good choices until you seek or you agree to be guided by the truth. And then it is your responsibility to also impart the truth or to speak the truth. When it comes to the family, then we have the responsibility to procreate. We need to get children. And then we need to form and inform their minds. We need to make sure that their understanding is brought to our level. Then when it comes to the environment, we have stewardship and social justice. When it comes to our field in health, then human rights have been brought into healthcare and have again caused a lot of confusion, because WHO defines health as the complete state of physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Now, if you look at the definition of WHO, it is godless. It does not consider the presence of God. And the current human rights charter is also godless. It does not refer to God. Now, how would we then apply this to our frame here? When you're talking about the body, the right to life, then you're talking about physical wellness. When it comes to the spiritual area here, when it comes to the choice or freedom, then you're talking about spiritual wellness. It is spiritual wellness we are looking at there. When it comes to the family, then we are looking at family wellness. And then when it comes to the environment, then we have environmental wellness. Now, if you take this structure and look at it, you realize that the definition by WHO is deficient in several ways. One is that it talks about social. Social is a very big term to discuss the community. Well, we know that the primary unit is the family. We want family wellness. We don't want a broad term. Then it doesn't have anything to do with spiritual wellness, and it has nothing to do with environmental wellness. Yet all these are important factors for our health. So if you consider natural law, then the definition for health would be a complete state of physical, mental, spiritual, family, and environmental well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. So in other words, as we apply our Christian faith, we need to go back into the world. We need to go back and look at definitions that have been used. We need to go back and look at the theories that are being taught to us and ask ourselves whether they are eroding what we believe and whether they need to be restructured to reflect the truth. You are younger than me. You are in academia. You have a lot of work to do. And that forms basically our foundation. Okay? So we'll now go into sexuality. So to understand sexuality, then you must see it in its fullness. Okay? It has components. Some people would define sexuality just from the point of feelings, thoughts, and attractions, and that is not enough because those can change. Some people will add expressions toward others, to your partner, to your community, and that your behavior can attract the opinion of others. We understand that there is an end or purpose to our sexuality. And we know that to be bonding, which is a relationship between the man and the woman, and procreation. Others say it is basically just for pleasure, and that pregnancy is a terrible side effect of sex for pleasure. But the easiest way to understand sexuality is simply that it is about the male and the female and how they relate to one another. Okay? That's what sexuality is. Now let's look at the similarities between men and women. Men and women are created by God, so they are equal in dignity. They are both intelligent. If you look at the way children pass their exams, the intelligence levels are the same. They both have the freedom to make choices. That is also true for both men and women. Unfortunately, that is where the similarities end. Beyond there, we are no longer the same. The main difference is because of the Y chromosome. If you remember your biology, the gonads that are inside the baby, when it is growing inside the mother, are neutral. They are not ovaries, they are not testes, they are just neutral. But when the Y chromosomes activates, the gonads then turn into testes. The testis produces testosterone. Testosterone, the first thing it does is it destroys the communication between the two hemispheres of the brain in the boy child as they are growing within their mother. So when it comes to communication, men, we don't use both hemispheres of our brain in communication. We only use one. And you will see why that is important. If the Y chromosome does not activate, that gonad, if it is absent, for instance, that gonad then becomes an ovary, and it produces hormones that turn the baby into a girl. Okay? So it's again very important we understand that. So what happens? What is the outcome that we find? Men take longer to make decisions. They take longer to offer a solution because they want to digest the options and they digest them internally. So if my wife comes and tells me my child has been kicked out of school because of school fees, I keep quiet because I need to think about my options. And she asks me, why are you keeping quiet and we have a problem? And I tell her I'm thinking. And she wants my answer immediately. And this causes a lot of confusion between the two sexes. However, once our choice is made, we remain very focused on that choice. And what happens is that we are very patient with our projects. So if I promise I will build a house, I buy a plot, and 3 years later there is no house, but I keep saying I'll build a house. Eventually it will be built, but then it may take a while. In the contrast, women will then have many little projects that are running at the same time, which is not like us. Now, we are very good at judging speed and distance. So those of you who have ever carried your mothers in their cars, or if you're married, you've carried your wife in the car, she's always complaining about how fast you're driving. Do you have to overtake that car? You know, is it necessary? You know, why are you driving so fast? We'll still get where we are going. And that also affects the way we play sports and what type of sports we play and what we enjoy. So Formula One is a male-dominated sport because of some of those things. So men tend to be futuristic, and we are very poor with details. We generally are bigger, we are more masculine. We have a penis, a prostate, and seminal vesicles that women do not have. It may sound obvious, but it is true. There are men who don't know that they are men, and they're actually gender confused. We tend to be aggressive, we are competitive, we are risk takers, and we are territorial. Most women will read territorial as egoistic. When I say I don't want anybody else telling me what to do in my house, it is territorial. In terms of fertility, we have fertility throughout life. Those of you who remember Jenga Karume, do you remember Jenga Karume? He passed away at the age of 80 and he had a 1-year-old son, isn't it? If you take all these things into consideration, men make very good leaders. And here we are talking about these are the choices you must make, and whichever one you take, people are going to die. If you put men and women in that situation, men end up performing better. When it comes to ladies, they can use both hemispheres of their brain, so they can multitask. So when I ask my wife, where do you want to go for dinner? And she says, maybe let's go to the Hilton. By the time we get to the stairs, she says her friend told her the Intercontinental is very nice. By the time we get downstairs to the car, she says even Chinese is not bad. Okay? Now, in 5 minutes, she's given me 3 different options, and we still don't have one. True? And men say women are confused, women cannot make decisions. Now, when she asked me the same thing, I keep quiet, and I go through the same process in my head, but I am not speaking. So I think about Intercontinental, Hilton, Chinese, and when I open my mouth, I say, let's go for Chinese. And I look very decisive, I look like I'm not confused and stuff. Are you getting the differences? So women verbalize their thought process, so they are able to speak as they are thinking. We can't, okay? And that is why we don't engage in arguments with you. It's a waste of time. Because if I call you a name, by the time I am thinking about another one, you have given me 3 or 4, isn't it? They tend to be poor with judging speed and distance. They are focused on details, and therefore tend to be historical. So my wife remembers the shirt I was wearing on our first date. I can't remember what I was wearing. You go and you tell her how you're going to build that house for her. She asks you, what are we going to eat today? The thing is focused on short term. They have the feminine body structure. They're generally smaller. They're less aggressive. They're more accommodative, and they're risk averse. So if something exploded here, the ladies generally would take off away from the noise. The boys would probably go to check what happened. Fertility is limited by menopause. And this is important for the girl child, especially when you're thinking about career. The master's and the PhD can be done in menopause, but children cannot be gotten in menopause. So there is need to balance your life interests as you pursue your career. Now, if you take all these things and you challenge men and women, women make very good managers. So anytime there is more than one choice to be made, and several things have to be run at the same time, then women beat men generally, okay? Now, this doesn't mean men cannot be managers, and it doesn't mean women cannot be leaders. Don't get that confused. All it means is that the differences between the sexes were made to be complementary, not competitive. Are we together? That the strengths of the man are not found in the woman, the strengths of the woman are not found in the man. When we are fighting for equality, it should not be to change the woman to become a man, and it's not to change the man to become a woman. It's about opportunities, it's about other things, but not about our sexuality. Is the male-female distinction necessary? Is it necessary that we can be able to tell who is male and who is female? This is not unique to the human beings, because it is critical for reproduction. It's basic biology. Now, when you study nature and you respect it as it is, you come up with very good innovations. And the engineers have used the male-female relationship to devise very good things. So if you see a plug and a socket, which is male and which is female? A plug and a socket. Which one is male? The plug is a male, isn't it? This is supposed to be socket, sorry. The door and the door frame. Which is male, which is female? The door is male, the frame is female. What about a lock and a key? The key is male. Yes, so if you study nature and you respect it, then engineering becomes very exciting. You can come up with very good things. Now, assume we remove the sex organs. So we cut off the breasts, we cut off the sexual organs, and we leave beings without those two. They will definitely not be human. They will be asexual beings. So this is just a thought. So we don't have breasts, we don't have the penis, we don't have the uterus, we don't have the birth canal, and at that point then we are the same. Okay? We are the same. We can still go to career and we can succeed, true? And we can still work hard and become very rich and successful, true? So to do those two things, you don't need to be male or female. They have nothing to do with sex. But the one thing that will happen is that asexual beings will not be able to reproduce. And basically, they will be extinct. Now, if you convince the human being to become asexual or to disregard the differences between the male and the female, what will happen is that the human race will become extinct. Is it necessary to have the male and female distinction? Now, let us look at sexual intercourse. Those things are small. It is the equivalent of mating in animals. So it is not a strange occurrence. It is the most intimate relationship you can have between a man and a woman. Now, what good things come out of sexual intercourse? Would you tell me a few? Just shout from where you are. Good things that come out of sexual intercourse. Sorry, only those of you who have experienced sex, sorry. Yeah. I had forgotten. So there is the bonding. It gives a very powerful union between a man and a woman, isn't it? When it is the ultimate total giving of self of one to another. And then there is children. True? How long does it take to raise one child until they're independent of the parents? You guys are still in your parents' home, right? You can't feed yourselves. So 18, 25, depending on when you'll finish college, right? And even if you finish college, you still have to get some kind of job, isn't it? So it takes 18 to 25 years to raise one child. Now, if you got married at the age of 25, then you'll be 50 years old when you finish with the first project, firstborn. And there's still 3 or 4 more to come, isn't it? By the time you finish with the children, you would be 60. At that time, there is no time to go back and start again. And you find that it just makes sense that if it is going to take me to the age of 50 to finish one project or 64 to finish with the last born, it makes sense that this relationship is permanent. And especially if you understand that 80% of what the children learn is by observation, because they learn different things from daddy and different things from mommy. The children need love, affection, they need moral mentorship for them to become upright citizens, for them to become secure adults. This will not happen unless both parents are engaged in the bringing up of these children. Now, any civilized society, and go and read again and you note the word civilized does not mean living in a mansion as opposed to living in a mud hut. It is about moral values. So most civilized societies understood this basic fact and therefore had always insisted that children are begotten in marriage. It is a necessity for the best outcome of the child. So marriage by definition can only be between a man and a woman because that is how procreation would occur. When somebody says 2 men got married, you should stand up quickly and tell them that is a false statement. Because for it to be marriage, it has to be male-female. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of you have actually said that 2 men got married. You should be ashamed of yourself, because it, by definition, is not correct. The other thing that is very important about marriage, in both the African context and in the Christian faith, is that it is consummated through sexual intercourse. So you go and you take your sacrament of matrimony in church, you must go home and you must have sexual intercourse for that marriage to be considered consummated. Okay? Now, in the African culture, it was the same way. If you had sex with a woman, you're married to her. So some of you here have been married 3 or 4 times already, and they'll still want to come to church in a white dress. Yes? And men have been married 5 times. It is important that these things are clear. I asked one young couple who came to my office for some consultation how they are related, and they told me they are dating. But then they wanted to know how to space children. So I asked, are you having sex? They said yes. And I asked, I thought you said you were dating. They said yes. So I asked, what then is dating? And they said dating is a committed relationship, but that involves sexual intercourse, but that is not leading to marriage. Now, if that is your definition of dating and you're seated here, you're living in deception, because what you have just described is marriage. It doesn't matter what you call it. Now let us see what consequences we would have of wrong sexual choices. So should I have sex or should I not have sex? I am not married. Lift up your hand if I should have sex. You guys are pretending to be nice. Yeah. So since you've refused to advise me, I'm going to have sex. Outside of marriage, okay? So I'm going to say yes. Now, what are the consequences? What are the possible outcomes of my choice? I have been dumped, so now I'm heartbroken. I have gotten HIV. I'm going to consider an abortion. I'm going to dump the child with my parents. I lose self-esteem because my partner has just taken off. Are these the only challenges I would face? I now want to have sex, but there's nobody to have sex with. So I'll masturbate or something because I need to sort myself out. Then I can mistrust my next relationship. Then I can go into depression. I can consider suicide. I'll have to pay for medical bills. I'll have infertility, cancer. I may end up with infections. I may die from the abortion. I may overburden my parents. I may become a single parent. I'll have wounded children. Then I will have an unstable family. And then there is infertility, infidelity, multiple sexual partners, drug and alcohol abuse, prostitution, pornography, homosexuality, blowjobs, rape, bestiality. And those are just what I could fit on the slide. Now, you say yes to sex, you do not choose your consequence. You can get away with it. You may not get any of these things. You may get these things or even more. If we consider sex sacred and a gift that is to be experienced in marriage, and we say no to extramarital sex, then basically you remain in a secure and intimate relationship. But the most important thing is that you remain on your journey to holiness. Okay? So I have a lot of sex, and I will go to heaven. Mumenisikia? What we want you to take home is that as parents, we have no problem with you having sex. Our problem is the timing. When are you going to have sex? If you respect the timing, that you are ready and you have left my home and you can take care of the responsibilities that come with that commitment, then you get pregnant in marriage, we celebrate. You get pregnant outside of marriage, then we get worried. It is not the sexual act, it has never been. It is the moral issues around it. Now, why are teenagers vulnerable? And why do you need to be careful? Now, the last part, the brain is the last organ to mature. I don't know whether you knew this. The brain is the last organ to mature. So the other animals would be born with about 90% of the brain function ready, so they will be born and they will stand up and start running around. The human child, it probably would be about 40%. That's why you can't speak, that's why you can't walk. Every time you're able to do something new, a part of the brain has matured. Now, sexual maturity starts at about age 8 and is complete about age 15, and this is what triggers your secondary sexual characteristics, or what we generally call adolescence. Now, the part that is associated with reasoning, which is the cortex, the part that allows you to make good choices, does not mature until you are 21 to 24 years of age. So the crisis we have in teenagehood is that we are sexually mature, but we are not, our reasoning is not mature yet. That is the crisis of teenagehood. And this is the reason why before, the age of consent was at 21. The age of voting was at 21. The age you could take alcohol was at 21. It was dropped to 18 during, I think, the Second World War, when they recruited 18-year-old men to go to war. And when they came back, they were told they can't vote because they are children, and it was a crisis. So we are old enough for you to send us to war, but we are not old enough for us to vote. And that's how it was dropped down to 18. So this is something that is important. So you can imagine, if you are a teenager, your age mate is not the person to go to, because they will not be able to help you. You need to go to people who are older, who care about you, who would be able to guide you based on the truth. And you avoid committed relationships. You avoid being alone with people of the same sex. You avoid any sexually stimulating contacts until you're basically socially mature. So what do we take home? The extramarital relationships are the only relationships in the whole world that I know that add no value to your personal or professional CV. Extramarital sexual relationships add no value to your CV. When you're looking for a job after campus, try and write how many people you have slept with and see whether it will help improve chances of you being called for an interview. Okay? If you're courting someone, go and tell them how many people you've slept with and see whether that will improve your chances of them agreeing to be your partner. Okay? Now, the other thing it gives us a problem is if you find something that John really liked, you might try it with Mark and they think you are the devil incarnate. Yes? You try something with Judy and she says she really liked it. You go and try it with Mary and she thinks you are from the pit of hell. That your sexual experience can actually become a hindrance in your relationship in future. Now, the vagina is very accommodative, and it has no problem when you present it with the same size consistently. But it gets thoroughly confused if you keep changing sizes. To us as parents, all we care about is the timing. Are you ready to make that decision? Are you ready for the responsibility that comes with engaging in sex? Because we said that is consummating a marriage. Are you ready for married life? You need to have left my home. You need to be able to take care of your personal business before you bring somebody else into your life. And then that person that you meet, you must remember that they are somebody's child. You must honor their parents. Whether you are male or female, the person you are talking to has come from a family, and that family cares and loves them. It is important that you go and you honor them and tell them that your intentions are honorable. We are also worried about the organs that are used. One of the greatest nightmares I have is having to treat gonorrhea of the tonsils. Now, we agreed that everything is made with a purpose, isn't it? Yes? The mouth and the rectum are not sex objects, are not sex organs. Now, when it comes to natural family planning, which is what we would like everybody to use, our greatest challenge is that by the time our ladies are coming and they're ready to get married, they do not know themselves. They do not know themselves, and that is giving us a big crisis. We need to teach the girl the ovulation cycle or the fertility cycle. I'll take you through this very quickly. We wasted your time teaching you the menstrual cycle, and I apologize officially. What we need to teach you is the ovulation or fertility cycle. So it starts with your periods. During the time of your periods, you're in phase 1 of your cycle, from the beginning to the end of the periods. Then you go into a period when you're dry, and we say we are waiting for fertility. After that, you experience a wetness, a mucus that you feel flowing through the birth canal like your periods are going to start. And this mucus is very, very slippery. And if you touch it between your fingers, it spreads between your fingers, it stretches. Now, after the mucus has ended, you still add another 3 days. And this period of mucus plus 3 days is very, very important, because that is when you're fertile. That's when you have your gift of fertility. By the 4th day after the end of the mucus, until the periods come, the fertility is over, and we are now waiting for our periods, and the menses start, and the cycle starts again. Now, the time of self-awareness is as the periods are coming to an end, and until the mucus starts and how long it lasts. This is a very important time for the girl child to keep an eye on herself to understand what is going on. So the space between the birth canal and the anus is very sensitive to touch. When you go for a short call and you're cleaning yourself, ask yourself whether that wetness feels like susu, whether that wetness feels like blood, and then confirm. So the periods are still there. The periods are now over. I'm waiting for my fertility. The next time you go to clean, you find there is a slippery mucus, and you can now tell that the mucus has started, then check how many days of mucus it lasts. So in your calendar, you chart periods have started, how many days of periods. Mucus have started, how many days of mucus. And then periods have started, how many days the periods have lasted. Now, if you have those apps on your phone that are called period trackers, and when you say periods have started, it tells you how many days they'll last, and it even tells you when you're going to be fertile. That thing is not right. You can never use your periods to know when your fertility will come. Now, the part of the cycle that is very constant is from the beginning of the mucus to the end of the period, to the beginning of the next period. When your mucus starts, it will be 10 to 14 days before your period starts again. Okay? So the mucus can predict for you when your menses will come, but your menses can never predict for you when the fertility will come. So this part of the cycle is very irregular, but this part of the cycle is very constant. Okay? The mucus plus 3 days is your fertile period. So women are only fertile for 4 to 6 days in a month. Now, if you take 4 to 6 days, you take 6 days of fertility, and you add that to, say, 4 days of periods, then you have 10 days within which you cannot engage in sexual activity if you're planning to space your children. Now, if you minus that from a 28-day cycle, then God gave us 6 days of fertility and 18 days within which we can enjoy our bonding without having a child. Are we together? Is that generous or not? So long as you understand you're not a wild animal, and so long as you understand you will not die if you don't have sex, it is very easy to use this to space your children without ever having to take a contraceptive. And all we need the girl child to understand is that this time of fertility is your God-given gift of fertility. Fertility is not, you see, the apps will call this the unsafe period. It is not an unsafe period because getting pregnant is not unsafe. Getting pregnant is a natural process for which you are designed. It is your God-given gift of giving us a child. Then learn to use it as you please. Use it to get a baby, use it to space the children, and if you're good with this, we can actually teach you how to choose boys or girls with an outcome of about 90%. Okay? So for the boy child, all we need you to understand is that you cannot have sex for pleasure. Gentlemen, mumesikia, men cannot have sex for pleasure. It is not possible. Because the way we were designed is, for you to experience sexual pleasure, you must give seed. Tuko pamoja? So for us, getting a baby and sexual pleasure are conjoined twins that cannot be separated. If you touch somebody's daughter, remember you have nominated her to be the mother of your children. Hata kama uko Koinange Street. Tuko pamoja vijana? You touch somebody's daughter, you have nominated her to be the mother of your children. And it is actually foolishness to come back and she tells you she's pregnant and you get shocked. Hey, what happened? Eh? We umeenda umepata shamba, a fertile piece of land. You have planted your seed and it has grown, and then you are surprised. Is that not foolishness? So the men have been given the seed that will give life. Use it very, very carefully. Because the child you bring to this world, you are supposed to be responsible to take back to the Father in heaven. That will never happen if the child is born, you don't even have an idea you have a baby. From the fourth day at the end of the mucus, fourth day from the end of the mucus, this area here is infertile. As we are waiting for periods, you cannot conceive a baby here. But from the end of the periods to the time the mucus starts, there are 3 rules that are very important that must be used. Otherwise, it's very easy to get pregnant here. Because the risk is having sex when the mucus is there, but you did not know that the mucus was present. Now, those 3 rules I'll teach you when you get married. Okay? So if you have, Mwalimu, if you have any of these people who are married, we can have a special session where we can teach them about this and how it applies. The idea is we have an older generation that is damaged. I am one of those in that group. We were never taught this. I was taught this just 4 years ago. It is not taught in medical school. That's why we don't teach it to you. And the reason we are not taught is so that we can prescribe contraceptives. Now, we are saying we are damaged goods, but we can save you from the trouble of having to use contraceptives by just teaching you to be yourself. The thing about the fertile period that I'd like to emphasize before we move from here is that there are changes the woman would experience, and it's important to try and connect those changes to the presence of the mucus. Just the same way your body talks to you before your menses come, your body also talks to you at the time when you're fertile, okay? So women would wake up with this beautiful face, very nice skin, without any pimples, without any blemishes. Some of them would describe it as a glowing face. You look in the mirror and you have very beautiful skin complexions. Then you're in very high spirits, you're in very nice moods, and you have this energy, you even walk quicker than usual, you know, and you're very keen about how you look, some nice warm colors, something that looks sexy, and your friend greets you, really feel like hugging them. It is very important you understand that the way God created you is that when you're fertile, you're most attractive and you're most likely to say yes to intercourse. So most of the girls who get pregnant are very good Christians. They went to the boyfriend's place not to have sex, but then they allowed them to be touched and they were fertile, and the next thing they knew, it was morning, and when we ask you what is wrong with you, you say you don't know what happened. And it is true. So you need to understand that when you're fertile, you're very vulnerable. Even if you have a friend you are meeting and you like, if you ever agree to go for coffee and you wake up one morning and find this mucus present, quickly tell them that something has come up, you're going to see them next week. So that anytime you are around them, you are completely in charge of yourself. It is very important to understand these things. So when we say don't go to his room, don't invite him to your room, don't accept physical contact that may be sexually stimulating, we are not saying we don't trust you. We are just saying you need to understand you're vulnerable and you need to know when to avoid getting into trouble. Okay? Now, we can take a short break and watch the next clip. Play for me the clip that says, "What is sex for?"
For us the clips if you don't mind. The soft copy. Is it?
Yes. Umeipata ndugu?
What is sex for? Some believe it isn't for anything. It's up to the individual to decide. One might decide it's for pleasure. Another, something you do to escape boredom. Some say sex is nothing more than a handshake or hug. But is that true? If the purpose of sex was just for pleasure, why is it associated with such heartache? For example, after a hookup, a guy never calls a girl, and this hurts her. Why? A hug doesn't cause this hurt. Or a couple is exclusively dating, then the guy finds out she was sleeping with someone else. He feels betrayed. Why? If sex is nothing more than a high five, handshake, or hug, it simply shouldn't matter. I think we intuitively know that there's something special about sex, but oftentimes we don't stop to ask the question, what is the purpose of sexual intimacy? Catholic author Frank Sheeds said, "The typical modern man practically never thinks about sex. He dreams of it, of course, by day and by night. He craves for it. He pictures it. He is stimulated or depressed by it. He drools over it. Drooling is not thinking. Picturing is not thinking. Craving is not thinking. Dreaming is not thinking. Thinking about sex means striving to see sex in the innermost reality and in the function it is meant to serve." When we think about the organs of the body, we see that they were ordered towards something. They have a purpose. For example, the ear. Our ears are ordered towards something. They're ordered towards taking in sound to hear. Our eyes are ordered into taking in light so that we can see. Our lungs are ordered towards breathing to take in air. So we wouldn't say the ear's purpose is whatever I decided it's for, or we wouldn't say the purpose of the lungs is for whatever inclination I feel that the lungs are for. No, we would look at it logically and say, well, they're ordered towards something. Our sexual organs are the only ones that are incomplete on their own. A woman's body on its own does not make sense. A man's body on its own does not make sense. The only way to understand a woman's physiology is to see it in light of man's physiology. And the only way to understand a man's body is to see it in light of a woman's body. Then we arrive at a complete picture of a man and woman, and then we can understand the purpose of sex. What is sex for? Number one, for bonding. There is a unitive aspect in the male and female body. The two become one flesh. And this is more than just a physical, casual union. Sexual intimacy is a total free gift of self to the other person that communicates, I am yours and you are mine. And number two, what is sex for? Well, babies. This is a lifelong consequence of sexual intimacy. This is what sexual intimacy is ordered to. Nobody has ever gotten pregnant and thought, I wonder how that happened. Sex is ordered not towards a temporary consequence, but a permanent one, a baby. It follows then that if babies are a permanent, lifelong consequence of sexual intimacy, then sexual intimacy is best experienced in a permanent, lifelong, committed relationship, which is marriage. And if with our bodies through sexual intimacy we're expressing, I am totally yours, this should be consistent with our state of life. And the only state of life that this would be consistent with would be marriage, where we commit ourselves to be faithfully and totally the other person's till death we part. So what is sex for? For babies and for bonding with the other person in the context of marriage. The church teaches by safeguarding both these essential aspects, the unitive and the procreative, the conjugal act preserves in its fullness the sense of true mutual love. But what happens if you take sexual intimacy and you use it for something against its purpose, outside of its purpose? Well, what if you take anything and use it against its purpose in contradiction to its design? Oftentimes, you get brokenness and hurt. For example, let's say you use the eyes for something they weren't designed for, like to take in food. Well, you damage the eyes. And what happens if you take the lungs and you use the lungs for something they weren't designed for, like to take in food? Well, then you could choke or worse, die. And what happens if you take sexual intimacy and you use it for something that it wasn't purposeful, wasn't designed for? Well, then you get a lot of brokenness and pain. How? Many different ways. You end up with broken marriages through infidelity. Sexual intimacy is meant for spouses, not neighbors. As a result, you end up with heartache, betrayal of trust, destroyed relationships. You end up with fatherless children. Casual sex offers no commitment beyond that moment. You end up with having unwanted children, couples wanting the pleasure of sex without the responsibility of raising a child, which of course leads to contraception, which is a contradiction to the nature of sex. Contraception, remember, has a failure rate. This leads to an abortion. Contraception failed to prevent a life, then let's destroy the life. More pain. You get sexual confusion. If sex is not for babies and for bonds, then there's no reason it can't be with anything or with anyone. Sexually transmitted infections. This would not exist if people were faithful to the purpose of sex. Proliferation of porn, which sees people as parts, not persons. Sexual intimacy outside of its purpose reduces a person to an object of lust through a one-night stand. Basically, you end up with a lot of hurt and pain. Why? Because sexual intimacy was designed between man and woman for babies and bonds, and taking it outside of that, what do you get? Broken families. And as the family goes, so goes the society. Yes, so what happens in the bedroom affects everyone. That is why we should be concerned about using our sexuality in communion with its design. My name is Ken Uzinski from CatholicSpeaker.com. Thank you for watching.
So I think that is self-explanatory. We ran through very quickly deceptions and other things that come and affect our sexuality. I ended up with 3 children because we were told the world is overpopulated and we are going to die because there is not going to be enough food. Then I discovered this, that Africa is drawn very similar in size to South America in most maps. It is not a very big continent. But then this is the true size of Africa. The red thing here is China. This yellow strip here is Japan. This is the United Kingdom. This is India. This is the whole of the United States of America. And these are some of the countries in Europe. Placed size for size over Africa, that is how big your continent is. If you look at the populations of those continents and subcontinents, the total then come to 4.1 billion people. And the whole estimated population of Africa is 1.2 billion. Is Africa overpopulated? Somebody is lying to us, and we need to find out why. The other thing of brokenness, of broken sexuality, is gender discrimination. This is happening mainly at the offices. So the male-female relationship has very distinct gender roles. And these are critical at the family unit. Only the mother can give birth to a child. Only the mother can breastfeed a child. That gender role we cannot take from the mother. The father is supposed to protect the mother and the child and present them with an environment that allows them to thrive. And that cannot be done by the mother. Now, those are very important in the family unit. But once we come into the marketplace, we are basically just human beings. You remember they are sexual beings. Your sex does not matter once you're in the marketplace, okay? So our gender roles are no longer important because we are just human beings and we are equal in dignity. So both sexes are important. Remember, if you're looking for a spouse, you must be able to identify a girl if you are a boy. If you are a boy, you must be able, a girl, you must be able to identify the girl. Remember, our thought process is affected by our sexuality. You remember the testosterone thing? And therefore, if you form a company, make sure on your board you have both genders. Make sure you have both. You must make sure you have men in your board and women in your board, because men think differently, women think differently. If you have a board full of men, you're likely to have errors that will be about detail and other things. If you have a board full of women, you may end up with errors about risk-taking and other things. So it's very important that if you want to run a good company, that you must make sure you have both. Now, once you're in the boardroom and you're a female director and you're the only woman in that board, and the chairman of the board says, kindly serve us with tea, because tea has been brought. You get up and you go to the table and you serve yourself a cup of tea, and you come back to the board table and you sit down and you sip your tea and you tell them, gentlemen, the tea is very nice. Are we together? You are not their wife. You only have one husband and he's at home. Here you are sitting as a director, you're not sitting as a woman. Are we together? You must voice your opinion, because the way you think is different from the way men think. So if there is something being discussed, don't think like a man. Just look at it from a female perspective and tell them you're overlooking 1, 2, 3 things. One of the most classical things when this happens is when you go to look for a house, and I go with my boyfriends and we look for a house, we have agreed we want a 3-bedroomed house. When we go, we look for things that men usually look for in the house. So I will check whether the security is enough. I will check and see whether the car can fit in the parking spot. I'll go behind there and see whether there is a place I can choma nyama with my friends. And then I'll ask how many bedrooms does the house have. I'll be told there are 3, and I'll say the house is very good, isn't it? Now, when my wife goes to look for the house with her friends, they go and they look at the kitchen and make sure it is spacious, it has enough space. She doesn't want to clash with the house girl when she's walking around. She wants the big fridge to sit here and the big cooker to sit here, even though we don't have one yet. Yes? And she wants to see whether her bedroom has a private toilet. So there are certain things women look for. And she'll say the house is good. Now, if we take each other to those houses, we will not be happy. Okay? So the idea is you sit down and discuss. What do you want in a house as a woman? And you say your part. And I say this is what I'm looking for. And then when we look for that house, we end up with something that is better than what each one of us would have had separately. That's the complementarity. There was a time my father was stopped by a traffic police woman, and she also stopped a matatu. And when she was talking to the makanga, the makanga guy says, "Sasa mama, utatusaidia namna gani?" And the lady told the young man, "Utaangalia hapa." She pointed at the crown. You know that hat? She pointed at the crown and said, "Unaongea na serikali, wacha kuangalia hapa." You understand? She is not a woman, she is a police officer. Okay? Rape is the worst thing that can happen to a woman. It is broken masculinity. It should be prevented. And we must hold these people to account, because the psychological wounds take a while to heal. But with support, then it can happen. You cannot tell a woman she was raped because of the way she was dressed. Even if she walked naked in front of you, you have no business touching her as a man, because she has not welcomed you. Sex is negotiated. Sex is discussed and agreed on consensually. So don't give us that story of it was the way she was dressed. Is none of your business to touch her. Now, it is critical that rape is reported early because of these things. It allows us to collect specimens that would help us to convict the person. It allows us to prevent infection by giving drugs. It allows us to prevent pregnancy, but it also allows us to catch the perpetrator. If you do not report rape, he is going to rape somebody else. And if you come out and you say what happened, we may be able to catch him, take him for treatment as we remove him from the rest of society. So that is about rape. Masturbation is being presented to us, especially to the boy child, as normal. Now the women watching pornography and masturbating. I'll show you a clip about this, so we won't spend too much time there. We have people who have same-sex attraction, people who have what we call gender dysphoria, or who don't know whether they are male or female. We have people who are in commercial sex work. Most of these people are very broken, abused in childhood. There are many injuries. Some of them, they can't even remember all the stuff that happened. You do not laugh at them, but there are people who need serious help. Now, porn, again, we'll look at this, but the worst thing about it is that it objectifies the woman and teaches self-gratification. We have had challenges of men who are unable to ejaculate when they have normal sex because they're used to masturbation. We have women who are not able to reach orgasm having normal sex because they train themselves with masturbation. It is something that one can stop, and if you stop long enough, your body resets back to the original. Abortion is another one, basically taking of life. It doesn't matter what you call it. Remember that the sperm will die a sperm if you leave it alone, and the sperm would never become a child. The egg will die an egg if you leave it alone. The minute the two come together, it is not a fertilized egg. It is a new human being in the process of development. It doesn't matter whether you call it a zygote, you call it a fetus, you call it whatever you want to call it. A person has been formed who does not exist anywhere else on this earth and whose purpose we shall not know until they're 24 years old. And it doesn't matter the circumstances of that conception, because they did not will that on themselves. So long as you destroy a life, whether it's inside the mother's womb or whether it is in an IVF laboratory, the minute you mix the sperm and the egg, you have created human life, and it needs to be protected and respected. Contraception is again something that prevents pregnancy. Remember, medicine is a science for diagnosis, treatment, and prevention of disease. Contraceptives are not medicines. They are drugs, like alcohol and bangi and all those other things. They are social drugs, but they are not medicines, and they cause disease. So pregnancy is not a disease, so this stuff is not medicine. If you could learn the natural, if you could learn your own system, you'd save yourself a lot of trouble. I've put the intersex child here because it's a special child. These are children who are born with a disability of the reproductive system because it either formed incompletely or did not form at all. So they are born with what we call ambiguous genitalia. When a child is born, we look between the legs and we can tell you it is a boy. We look between the legs, we tell you it's a girl. With the intersex child, we look between the legs and we don't know. It may look like a boy because the clitoris, is it a large clitoris or is it a penis that is small? We don't know. Is that dimple a vagina or is it not? We don't know. So it becomes very difficult to tell whether this is a boy or a girl. Now remember, it is not the doctor who assigns the sex. We just record what we see. We don't determine it, we don't assign sex. It is a natural thing that happens. Now, if we are not able to tell, and we do tests, and we still can't tell whether it's a boy or a girl, then that child is intersex. They do not have both male and female organs. They have incompletely developed male or incompletely developed female organs. Okay? So you might find an ovary, one side is an ovary, the other side is a testis. Those are not two organs, it is one that did not convert into the other. And the beauty is that after adolescence sets in, this problem resolves itself. So even when there was confusion as to what they were as a child, once the secondary sexual characteristics develop, then you can tell this is a boy, this is a girl, and we need to change their IDs to reflect the new reality. And that's why the transgenders are very interested in them, because of the legal possibility of changing the sex on the ID. So these are special children, they need special care, and at puberty they must be helped to transition. So we've talked about gender-based violence is because of people not understanding their roles. And then there is this movement called the Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights Movement that is teaching our children that sex is for pleasure, and because sex is for pleasure, pregnancy is a very bad outcome. And therefore you are told these are unsafe days, these are the days that are a headache to you. Then you must teach people to use contraceptives if they're having sex for pleasure, and it doesn't have to be in marriage, it can be anywhere. And because it's for pleasure, it can be with anything also. It doesn't have to be male, female, it can be male, male, female, female, it can be male animal, it can be male object, it can be anything you want, because what you're seeking is pleasure. And because people may get pregnant, even though they use the contraceptive, then the problem must be solved by offering abortion as a solution. So the sexual and reproductive health and rights is completely contrary to our faith, our African culture and our faith. Let me just finish by saying one thing. We'll look at this picture at the end. Let me just finish by saying one thing. The Postino 2 tablet, the morning after tablet, that tablet, just one tablet, has the equivalent of 25 normal contraceptive pills. All right? So by the time you take the second pill, you have taken the equivalent of 50 contraceptive pills at one go. Those are like 3 packs of contraceptive pills in 24 hours. And it is very, very destructive. It is best that we understand these things. So in conclusion, there is a God who created everything that we see that we don't see. And God created everything that we have with a purpose and for a reason. Life is sacred. We must respect it and we must protect it. He's the one who created the institution of the family, and it is important that we take care of the family. And you have a right to a personal opinion, we agree. But if it is not consistent with these truths, it is irrelevant and may actually be dangerous. Okay? If you understand what we've just gone through, it will give you peace. But if you accept the deception, then you will get a lot of psychological and mental disorders. So psychological and mental disorders are the results of the fact that your conscience, which is telling you what is good and what is wrong, it is guiding you to do good, and you're resisting and doing what is wrong. That conflict is what gives us psychological problems and mental problems. So they always start off as a spiritual thing. Your moral compass is broken. You end up doing the wrong thing, and that is what gives you challenges, that you come back to us telling us you have psychological problems or you have mental issues, but really what you're suffering from is the fact that you know what you're doing is not right, but you're consistently ignoring your conscience. So if you show us the last clip, we'll be done and we can take questions. This one is about the dangers of pornography and masturbation.
I firmly believe that NoFap is the #1 most life-changing change that you can make in your life today. But there's a lot of skepticism behind quitting pornography, as our society actually encourages young men and women to watch porn and masturbate. It's considered normal. It's considered healthy. And because of this, there's millions of people on this planet that are not aware of the dangerous side effects of viewing pornography. So today I'm going to convince you to take on the NoFap challenge and quit pornography for good by using scientific evidence to back up my claims. Now, before we even jump into pornography itself, we have to talk about a special little neurotransmitter called dopamine. What is dopamine? Why is it important? Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that is responsible for seeking and searching rewards. Dopamine provides us with the motivation and drive to pursue potential rewards or long-term goals. If you've ever craved a dessert, that was all because of dopamine. If you ever spent hours on a video game trying to level up, that was dopamine. If you ever dragged your ass out of bed to go to class in the morning, that was dopamine. Without it, you lose all motivation to go out there and do things. Scientists have even conducted experiments where they turned off the dopamine receptors in rats and found that the rats would become so lazy that they die of starvation even though there was food in their cage. They simply had no motivation. Drugs like cocaine, heroin, Adderall all work on the dopamine receptors in your brain. They stimulate the dopamine receptors at extremely high levels. Your body is constantly trying to maintain homeostasis, which is a baseline level. So when presented with levels that are not natural, your brain reacts by decreasing your overall number of receptors. What are the effects of lower amounts of dopamine? Studies have shown that people with low dopamine receptors have the following side effects: fatigue, lack of motivation, insomnia, mood swings, memory loss, social anxiety, low libido, sugar cravings, stress, inability to connect with others, inability to focus. And there's also growing evidence that low dopamine is a direct cause of depression. You're probably thinking, well, that's for hardcore drugs. There's no way pornography can have a similar effect on my nervous system as cocaine. And it's here where you're wrong. Sexual stimuli is actually the most stimulating dopamine activity you can naturally partake in. It's because sex is crucial for the survival of your genes, so your body always rewarded you the most for it. It raises your dopamine levels to around 200%, which is the same amount as morphine, and a bit lower than cocaine, which stands at 300%. And unlike cocaine, which peaks at 300% for only a couple of minutes, pornography has the ability to stay above 200% for as long as you'd like. This is due to something called the Coolidge effect. When scientists put a male mouse into a cage with a female mouse, they observed that the mice would have a ton of sex, but over time, the male would start to get less and less interested. He would have a harder time reaching orgasm, and eventually he was no longer interested in having sex. This indicated that dopamine levels decreased over time. However, when a new female mouse was introduced, his dopamine levels would spike all the way back up, and he'd be able to go at it again. In fact, if the scientist continued to introduce new female mice into his cage, he would keep having sex until he physically could not move. This same effect is 100% present in humans. This means while watching pornography, you can consistently keep your dopamine levels high by watching different videos. Every new video, every new clip you watch is like taking another little bump of cocaine. And unlike cocaine, which is something you can only do so much of because of its high cost, difficulty to get, and risk of overdose, it's entirely possible for you to watch porn for hours and hours at a time. And remember, for the entire time you're watching porn, you're bombarding your brain with dopamine levels equivalent to those caused by some hardcore drugs. And of course, when that happens, your brain starts decreasing the amount of dopamine receptors you have. And over the course of years of watching porn, you end up doing some serious damage to your dopamine reward circuits. This is a large reason as to why there are so many men out there that have mental disorders such as social anxiety, depression, and lack of motivation. It's because they're constantly screwing with their dopamine, and the worst part is that society is actually encouraging them to do so. It's to no surprise that people who take on the NoFap challenge and quit pornography for good have reported things like more motivation, more libido, less anxiety, an increase in social skills, a feeling of being alive again. It's because when they finally stop watching porn, their dopamine levels start returning to normal. Take on the NoFap challenge and I can guarantee that you'll see the same benefits. I will absolutely make a video on how to actually go about quitting pornography, so if you don't want to miss it, please subscribe. If you have any questions, please leave a comment below and I'll be happy to answer all of them.
That's good enough. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Maybe you can give him another applause of claps, please. And with his strength, yeah? So, okay, now it is a session time, and we will carry 3 questions from here, and then people from Jubilee, they get prepared. And here I ask the class representatives, down here, we have 2. One side, the other side of one, this row and that row, and one up there. So I ask the class rep of nursing to come and pick the mic. And another one for community health and development. And then education, one, the 3, please, quickly. The one of nursing, education. Okay, nursing, I think they are here. Education. Community health, please, so to go up there, to come and.
Just one thing I forgot to mention that I don't like leaving without mentioning. If there is anybody here from a single parent family, if you are from a single mother or is your father looking after you alone, go home and hug them and tell them thank you, because it's a very, very difficult thing to do. Just the decision to keep the pregnancy and keep the baby despite what everybody else thinks The fact that they looked after you even if they were abandoned by somebody is very important. We respect that. But it is important that we also do not let it happen again. It can end with you and you can make different choices. But always be grateful that they gave us a chance.
So now,
any question, please? Mtahitaji kuchangamuka.
any question? Okay.
This
There is one there.
yeah, you are the future, and we need people who are bold, people who can be courageous to speak the truth, people who can be courageous to challenge the status quo and call things by what they are supposed to be. We cannot afford to have a young generation that is docile. You cannot be pushed around and be told what to do without reference to the truth.
So,
thanks a lot, Doctor, for all the information we have got. We as health workers, we have found that there are some challenges in our field. Being Christians, we advocate for natural family planning, but in a real sense, we are not practicing it. We are more of artificial. So from now, I don't know how we are going to convince people that we are going to use natural family planning so that we can help the society. Thank you.
Thank you, sister. Maybe another question before he responds. We are asking 3 consecutively. Area of education. The people from upstairs, please. Is there anyone there? You can give the mic if there's anyone, please. Okay, there's one.
Thank you, Doctor, for the session. I think to add on what Sister just said, you yourself, you have already told us that you've just learned the natural way of maintaining yourself with your wife 4 years ago. But for us, we have to advise these people who come for natural prevention or whatever to not use the contraceptive, but instead to do it naturally. For instance, you've not given us a step, and you've claimed that you'll give it to married people. And I don't think if there is somebody here who will not be married, because we are only going in generations and we are moving on. I just urge, if you can give us that step of Newcastle, that place, so that we can also be alarmed and be at the par with the new model. And we should not go for those P2 whatever that you have said they go up to 50, that are very much destructive to our health. And we maintain our natural human beings. Thank you. I will be much appreciated for that. And I think I have spoken for many people who are just sitting on the same. Thank you.
Okay, another one from the here. I think that's the last one. The other one maybe we shall wait for till when. Okay.
Thank you very much, Doctor. You have given us a wordful introduction concerning the dopamine stuff, explain the dopamine hormone. And as biology students, I would really love you to explain to us and expound on the fact that the implications that the dopamine hormone has on the life cycle of a human being when at various times it's either suppressed and at some other points when it is at its lower levels and its high points. And thus the need as to why we should keep it at a constant level. Thank you.
Okay, before the doctor answers the question, I ask the people at the Jubilee Hall to prepare. After as he responded to the questions, please, we shall receive other 3 questions from those who are watching from the Jubilee Hall. So, Doctor, most welcome to respond to the questions.
Okay, so very quickly, the reason why natural family planning has had been a big problem to teach is because we were using the older methods where you had to be taught like 5 different things you have to do. You had to do charts. And the reason why the Dr. Karanja developed this one was a question of how do you teach natural family planning to an illiterate woman? If you're going to teach her to count, to do calendars, to do temperatures, to do this, how do you teach that to a woman who has never gone to school? And he found that the women in Pokot use this, the women in Turkana know this, and they just tell you, we know ourselves, and we know when to go to our husbands and when not to go to our husbands. And the men have been trained that you ask nicely. And if it is not today, then you agree, you don't force yourself on people. So the first challenge is to make sure this is taught in school to the girl child, that she knows herself. The same way she would predict her periods is the same way she can predict her fertility, and that she can tell, I am fertile now. That is the information that is very, very critical. To the boy child, we just need you to understand you're not an animal and you can live without sex. And as to the issue about the other 3 rules, the thing is, when you're married, you just need 15 minutes and you can understand these things. Your wife already knows herself. You know to respect her when she tells you she's fertile or not, depending on what you want. But if you want to use this to replace the P2s and others, but keep sex outside of marriage, then I am not going to facilitate that, okay? So we shall make sure that those of you who are ready to get married or are in courtship, preparing to get married, we can do a Zoom for you. I don't charge. I'll teach you those things. Before that, focus on your career, get out of school, get out of my house, then we can talk about sex. The last one was, which one? Was the dopamine was explained. That clip is self-explanatory. I'll give you the clips. The thing is, if you stimulate the dopamine levels very high, then your brain brings down the receptors so that it can control the excitement. And when you do that, then once you stop watching your pornography, then you have no motivation, okay? It is the same thing if you get married and you're able to take breaks of sex 2 or 3 days because she's on her periods, 6 days because she's fertile, sex becomes very good. And people who have used the natural method of family planning have fewer divorce rates than people who use contraception for some of those reasons, okay? The sexual life is much better when people use the natural. So there is a lot of stuff that is of benefit. But we must not separate sexual activity and marriage. So the difference between adultery and the conjugal act is the sacrament of matrimony, okay?
Thank you, Doctor. Now we welcome those people from the Jubilee Hall, please. The one in charge there can ask the question. The one directing, please. Are they getting us? Are you getting us, please?
There is a time lag, so that's why we can't respond immediately.
Meanwhile, as they are preparing to come, I will ask the pro-life leader. He has some message for us. Just some 2 to 5 minutes. He will be given a chance to come and address us. Thereafter, we shall have some communication from our director, who is directing this cause of us, Reverend Dr. Peter Mbaro. And thereafter, a vote of thanks will be given by Reverend Father Mwai. Then in closing prayer, I ask Sister Claire to prepare to give us a closing prayer. Then from there, then we shall go for another session. These are the challenges of the modern technology sometimes in Africa. So, but Doctor, for me, I would have something like a comment or to say about. Most often when we see the clips regarding pornography, the ones who have presented us here, we find the main actors, they appear to be white people, not dark people. What could be maybe the reasons? Most times you can hardly see those pornographs being created by black race or something like that. Maybe you can be thinking of that as they are preparing to respond. Thank you.
It is because they are the originators of the product. The first person to develop pornographic material was a Frenchman many years back. So they are the originators, but now we have even Kenyan actors. So it's become a major problem. So originally they are the original producers. It has just come to us.
We are going to give you about 3 or 4 questions. Okay. Thank you so much, Doctor.
The volume.
Where is the world going right now, where some of the countries have allowed adultery, same-sex marriage, incest, purchasing public sex, bestiality, pornographic films, and lastly, some of the states have made it possible to open satanic churches. Where is the world going? We as the young generation.
Did anybody hear the question?
Can you repeat it, please? Can you repeat the question?
Are they getting us? Okay, my question is, where is my question is, where is the world going? Where some of the countries have allowed adultery, incest, same-sex marriage.
Please be clear.
Is it?
involving prayer. Yes, Sister Daniela. Prayer, then from there,
Okay, maybe.
So I've heard the first one about where is the world going. Some countries have allowed adultery and pornography and all those things.
Sorry, there is some pitch, but they are saying like they have got the question. It's just like patience.
I think you can.
Yeah, the challenges of
because of the technical
challenges. Think about most often when we see the clips regarding pornography, we find many outside
Okay, then I think Doctor you can respond.
What would you tell people who engage in sexual intercourse before marriage? What would you tell people who engage in sexual intercourse before marriage? And furthermore, given the fact that vaccines and drugs have side effects, what would you say about the current use of the COVID vaccine and other drugs?
I think those are the three. The technical vote. There is a lot of confusion. I'm asking now the.
Okay, my name is Brian. My question.
I think the. I mean,
Okay,
Doctor,
my
you can
name
respond
is
to the
Brian.
three. You have.
My question is that as I searched in the internet, I heard that pornography and such things, they have the ability to impair our mind. Is it scientifically proven or it's just a view of somebody? And another question is, in our society today, you have taught us is that we have social challenges on regard to sexuality. What can be done best in our current society to enable the youth to take full control of their sexuality and their view about the general view of sex? That's to sexuality.
I think there are more than three questions now. So that we ask the.
My question is, where is the world going?
The technical
Where some
people,
of the
please.
countries have allowed adultery,
Help us to
incest,
stop. To already three. There are already three questions.
same-sex marriage.
The technical people, please help us because there are more than three questions already. When we ask the doctor to respond, maybe they will ask others if they will be still time.
Manuel, I'm a student bachelor.
Okay, now can they hear me? They're off the screen. So where is the world going? Some people have allowed devil worshipping, they have allowed adultery, they have allowed this. Remember, please, ladies and gentlemen, that we are sum total of our individual choices. You cannot complain about the world because there is not much you can do about the world, but there is something you can do about yourself. The take home here is each one of you will make their personal choices. Each one of you will be responsible for the consequences of their choices. There is no room for mob psychology in sexuality. You cannot tell us you're having sex because everybody is having sex. You should be telling us it is because it is right or because it is wrong. It is your personal responsibility, and that responsibility must reflect in the way you behave, because you understand the first relationship is with your God, and then the other one is with us. So let's stop talking generally. When we leave this room, go and make individual choices. Are you going to continue having sex out of marriage? Are you going to continue watching pornography? Are you going to continue masturbating? Or are you going to make different choices for yourself? That is where it all ends. The world would become a better place if each one of us made better choices. Now, your choice is God-given. Your right of choice, your freedom to choose is God-given. But it comes with a responsibility. Because remember, you cannot make choices unless you are given guidelines. Do not drive beyond 80 kilometers an hour. If you are given that guideline, then you can choose to either obey it or disobey it. If there is no guideline, then you are not free because you have no choices to make. All right? So the guidelines we have been given are guidelines we have been given by the Creator himself. He created us with a purpose. You can choose to follow them and be happy, or you can choose to disobey them and then you take your consequences. But you cannot say you don't know from today, because from today you know the truth. Second thing, always look for the truth before you make your choices. It is your personal responsibility to make sure you're guided by the truth. So what can youth do about the sexuality that is affecting and other things? Again, individually make the right choices, and collectively we shall have a new generation. If you individually make the wrong choices, then collectively we'll have a broken generation. It is up to you. As your parents, we have made mistakes. We have known out of old age. We have come back to you to tell you the truth in the hope that you make different choices, that you don't have to repeat the mistakes that we made. But you have a choice. You can decide to repeat exactly the same mistakes and regret like we did at the age of 50, and then try and tell your children a different story. Or you can make your decisions now and live a different life and help your children not make the same mistakes that we made. So as far as I'm concerned, I've done my work. The rest is up to you. It's just like I can bring you the good news of salvation, but it's not for me to convict you. If you live here not convinced, it's not my problem. I've already done my work. If you live here a new person, then I have done my work for the glory of God. But you cannot say you don't know from now. You could have come in here ignorant, going out of here, then you're making choices based on the knowledge of truth.
Thank you so much, Doctor. We give him another applause of clap. I think since the message was so good to us and it has been very helpful to us, let us give him rain clap. Rain clap here, at least once. We begin with one finger like this. 2, you join. 3, 4, then 5. Can we practice once more? Moja, mbili, tatu, nne, tano. Now we do it officially now and we give back to him. Let us begin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you so much, Doctor, and for the good talk. It has really been very encouraging and very nice to us, and we appreciate that. Now, I welcome the pro-life chairperson or representative, just briefly, like 1 or 2 minutes, to tell us something. Meanwhile, I ask those whom I gave the microphones, please, to bring the representatives to bring here. So welcome.
Shalom, brothers and sisters. Shalom, brothers and sisters. My name is Naidan Katha. I am a 4th-year student here at the Catholic University of Eastern Africa. I am a pro-life member. I'm also a member of KCPF and a volunteer of Citizen Go Africa. Mine here is to talk very little about pro-life and what we do. Pro-life means to defend life, to promote life, and to be for life. And what we pro-lifers do, we defend life. We believe that life is sacred from the moment of conception to natural death. And we defend, protect, and promote human life. We also are strongly for chastity because we believe that once we are chaste, we won't have to deal with issues like abortion, contraception, and all the other evils that come when we don't observe chastity. And I would quote what I saw Daktari write, that extramarital sexual experience does not add anything to our CV. And I would say most of the things that Daktari has talked about actually are what we pro-lifers do, and it is what we stand for. So if any of you or all of you, if possible, would like to join the pro-life movement, we'll be very happy. We meet at Zadwa Hall, room 5, every Thursday from 11 to 11:50 a.m. But this Thursday, there's a little bit of a difference because it is the Life Week. So we will meet here at the waterfront and we will march for life within the university. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Snyder. Now I welcome our director to give some communications. Please, Reverend Dr. Mbaro, most welcome.
Thank you very much, our MC. I first of all recognize once again that our facilitator today, Dr. Wahome Ngari, has taken us through this session that has enlightened us, that has stamped what we have always been longing for. That is defense of human life and, of course, the dignity of the human person. Mine is to say that we will commit ourselves at the Center for Social Justice and Ethics, which is charged with the responsibility of facilitating the teaching of Christian ethics as a unit. We will endeavor to always have these sessions together as a summary, as a climax of what we are learning in our different rooms. And therefore, ours is needed to once again ask Dr. Wahome Ngari that if we are to invite you again to another group, because we have it every semester, apart from the May-August semester, when we do not have a very big group, that you will always be ready. And if not you in person, you'll always get at one of facilitators from that KCPF. And I believe that we will be able to learn a lot. We will even organize other conferences, if possible, even not only for the students who are doing Christian ethics and those who are doing justice and peace, but even our university as a whole, because we believe in transformative education, that we are going to transform the society. Mine is to say, thank you very much, even members, the student fraternity, and the staff for coming to this session. Thank you very much. And I think we will continue communicating other things even in future.
Thank you so much, Dr. We clap. Our director, the one directing us. Before I welcome the vote of thanks from Father Mwai as he prepares, I ask Sister Claire to come in front here as he finish, that you may give us the closing prayer. So the one who is giving the vote of thanks, you are most welcome, Reverend Father Mwai.
Good morning once again. God is good, and all the time. Thank you for this opportunity to move a vote of thanks to Daktari for what we have experienced this morning. I must thank you, Dr. Wahome Ngari, for having taken your time, your energy, and your will and commitment to be with us this morning. You may not know what you have imparted in us, but I'm sure it is going to help us a long way in the course of our life. You will agree with me that the subject matter has been presented in a very simple, clear, and detailed way, and it has also been very convincing, isn't it? So, Doctor, we thank you for that. I'm sure that your faith, your profession, and your experience have really come in handy in this, because as a doctor, and also as a member of the Association of Catholic Doctors in Kenya. I'm sure that you have really delved in this in many forums, and as it came from you, we can see that it is part of you. You have taught us a subject that is really shunned generally in our society. Not many people want to face the truth. And so when you teach us that truth is our foundation, in philosophy, I'm a student of philosophy, we say that truth is the object of our intellect. And without truth, then we are nothing. So you've taught us this subject that many people don't like to face, because even when we come to sexuality, we know that sexuality has been commercialized, it is used for business, and it has also been used for exploitation. But here, a very important point comes out, that your sexuality has something to do with your free will. It has something to do with your choices, and it has also something to do with our intelligence. Thank you so much, Daktari, for that. I believe that all of us who have attended this conference today, we will take it up, and it is going to be instrumental in our life and in our decision making. Woe to us if we mess around with the life only to remember that we attended this particular session and we got all the points that Daktari has really put across. I wish to thank the university and the Center for Social Justice and Ethics for organizing all this. I also wish to thank our director, Dr. Father Barrow, and all the lecturers who are involved in teaching Christian ethics are included. And I want to thank all the members, the students' body that has availed itself for this. Thank you so much, and let me assure you that this is not in vain. May God bless you, Daktari. May He bless your family. May He bless the work that you do and all your patients and many people who come to you for guidance and counseling and also anything else that they need along the way of life. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Reverend Father Mwai, for the vote of thanks. Before we conclude, I have some few reminder to you that the students of the Faculty of Education, remember to register. With the Father, before you leave the hall, please make sure that you register. And the laws of social justice and ethics, please. Also, I'm just reminding you, you also remain for the registration. Meanwhile, remember that we have done our part. As always, the work of education or anything, as you have heard, it does three things to you. One is to inform you, and that is our work. Two is to form you, like a potter forms you, and it can form you only if you accept how you want to be shaped. And lastly, now is to the practical aspect, that is to transform you. So we really ask you to be transformed by whatever you have received, and through Christian ethics may help you to see life in a better way or different as you usually to see it. Thanks so much. I welcome now Sister Claire to give us the final word, and then we shall give you the blessing. Thank you.
Let us all believe and pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. God Almighty Father, we are here as your children. We thank you for the word you have taught us through your servant, Dr. Wahome. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day, for all that you planned for us, especially the message to the youth that as they are struggling to discern what is right, what is good, regarding to their sexuality. Mighty Father, we understand it is the core value that mostly younger people get confused, that today you have reminded us that you are control in everything. Take control this moment, that as we leave this place, we may understand your will. You may touch each of us and understand that you have created us for a purpose, and you have each and everybody a discernment to procreate in a right way. May you, Lord, bless our country, that all the members, all the citizens may understand your will. Even today, we have learned that those artificial protective measures cannot do anything without you. May we, Lord, be the role model to the society, that we may procreate life that is true, life that can last. Thank you, Lord, for this university, for having proclaimed for us this moment. May you bless all the fathers who have planned for this, and continue blessing them, and continue leading us as students, so that everything we do, we may do according to your will. We ask all this through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you.
For the Education Department, the class lab is hereby distributing the lists for you to sign and acknowledge your attendance.